Hey everyone, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Shannon.
And together, we're launching a brand new independent school called Acton Academy Victoria.
But this podcast is about more than just a new outlook on education.
Our school is part of a larger journey that we are on to learn what it means to be an intentional family.
Because we don't just want to see our kids get to graduation. We are looking to raise up the entrepreneurs, change makers, and leaders of tomorrow.
So thank you for joining us for another episode of The Intentional Family. Well, welcome back to the Intentional Family Podcast. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Shannon. We're excited to have you back, and we're really excited about the topic of today's episode.
Yeah, so today we are deep diving into educational choice.
Yeah, school choice is something that we are obviously very passionate about. We're starting a school.
You're probably listening to this because you know we're starting a school and you're also thinking about this. And so we've talked a lot about some of the more personal things, the under the surface things of why we are starting Acton as a school. But today we actually wanted to walk you through a little bit of our thought process around education in general and why Acton for us specifically.
Yeah. And we want to kind of start off this episode recognizing that school choice is there for a reason. School is not a one-size-fits-all.
No, because human beings aren't a one-size-fits-all.
And so we recognize that Acton is not a good fit for every child or every family, just like public school isn't a good fit for every child or family, and Christian school isn't a good fit, or homeschooling.
Or prep school.
Like
Montessori, or the myriad of other methods and styles of school.
Absolutely. So we just want to walk into this conversation with a lot of grace and humility, knowing that don't hear what we're not saying, that like Acton is going to be the fixer of everything.
No, and at the same time, I think we want to be upfront and honest that we have fallen in love with this, and there's, we think, really compelling reasons why this is a great model for education and why we think it's the best model for our family.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we really want to talk about today is that there is this need in our society to rethink how education is done because our world has changed and we need different kinds of people. So why don't we dive into that?
Well, I think at our front end, one of the things that we constantly talk about is intentionality versus the drift, right? Mm-hmm. Versus the default. And education is no different. When most parents think about school, oftentimes I think they consider outcomes, right? Things like grades, graduation, maybe even college. Like, where does this end? What doors does this open?
Or even they don't think about necessarily that at all. It's like, this is our option and this is what's always been done. And so therefore, that's, of course, what we're going to do.
Yeah, but what if the better question is, what kind of human is this forming?
Yeah.
And so here's the big tension, I think, that really shaped our quest for education, or at least educational choice. Because whether we realize it or not, every educational choice is forming something.
Yeah.
Our kids are going to go to some institution, or they're going to stay home if you homeschool. And that experience is going to shape who they are as a human being. It's not neutral.
No.
It's not just reading, writing, and math. It can never just be academic. It's shaping identity. It's forming habits. It's developing loves, and it's cultivating attention. So this is where our conversation last week really comes into play. Last week, you may remember we talked about values, these convictions, these belief systems that underlie everything that we do. We value our faith. We value our family connection. We talked about this marriage unity. All those things are core values. And the reality is that values actually matter when it comes to educational choice. Again, this is a repeat, but we all have values. Most of us have values that we leave unexamined. We tend to go into the drift, into the defaults. And the problem with that is because of that, oftentimes we find ourselves just going to the option that's right in front of us without asking deeper questions about why.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so some of the things that we need to think about when it comes to education are, what are our values? Things like, do we value security or do we value risk? Do we value comfort or do we value growth? Do we value compliance or do we value creativity? Do we value achievement or do we value character? So before we can really talk about Acton or any other school model, we have to ask, what is it that anyone who's starting to think about school as actually aiming for? What is the goal?
Yeah. So I know in our process, when we started thinking about schools, we started asking ourselves the question is what kind of humans do we want? What do we want our kids to have or be in 10, 20, or 30 years?
Right.
What skills do we want them to have? What character do they need to have? And not only that, but what does our world need from them?
Mm-hmm.
And so that really helped us at least start to drift into where we landed.
Right. I think, to frame it all up, the question we weren't asking was, how do we get our kids into the right college?
Yeah.
That actually, to me personally, is a really uninteresting question, because I think that you could have a kid who gets into all the right colleges and gets all the right opportunities and turns out to be a complete disaster.
Well, yeah, and even in today's day and age, like a college degree doesn't actually get you that much.
Well, in some places
it does. But I mean, it doesn't actually tell you a lot about a person anymore, about their grit, about their resilience, about their skill set.
Right. I mean, we can go back to that story you told a few episodes ago when you were talking about the students that you had who were all coming through college and didn't actually have the necessary life skills for nursing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the big broad strokes picture that we are trying to form in this episode is encouraging everyone to ask the question, what kind of kids, or human beings rather, is this educational process going to form?
Yeah.
And I think that is the fundamental question that anyone should ask and figure out when they're trying to figure out what should we do for schooling. So as we began to explore this, what we realized is the educational system itself is basically forming people for a particular world. And there's this great Instagram account, a guy named Cody Jefferson, and he talks about this in his Instagram. Let me just read you a post that he put recently because I think it's helpful. So Cody writes this: school is preparing your children for a world that no longer exists, and almost no parents realize it yet. If we don't rethink what we teach our kids, we risk preparing them for a future that is already disappearing. The world your child is entering will be radically different. Artificial intelligence will replace tasks. Automation will replace routine work. Information is already free. The advantage will no longer belong to the person who knows the most. It will belong to the person who knows how to think, build, and lead. That changes everything about how we raise our kids. For 150 years, school trained children to become reliable workers, show up on time, follow instructions, memorize information, complete the task. That system was designed during the Industrial Revolution. It produced excellent employees, but the future economy will reward something completely different. The most valuable people in the next economy will not be employees. They will be problem framers, people who can see patterns others miss, ask better questions, design new solutions, build systems instead of following them. AI can generate answers, but humans must still decide which problems are worth solving. And I mean, he has a number of other things that he outlines in this quote, but I think it really helps remind us that the education system as we have it today was actually built like 150 years ago.
Yeah.
So for those who have never deep dived into education and its history, from what I understand, the model of education that we currently see today was originally developed by the Prussians, and they were interested in trying to make sure that they had good citizens and good soldiers. They wanted uniformity. They wanted people who knew how to obey the orders of their superiors. And so a lot of the ways that they designed school was about that uniformity. They segmented grades, and so you didn't have mixed age classrooms. Everyone was in the same grade. They moved up in the same tier together, similar to what you would do with a cohort of people that you're training in the military.
Yeah. You put people in rows.
Yep.
You line them up. You govern their time with a bell.
Right. That signifies the start and the end.
Yep. You have one person disseminating all the information and keeping control of it.
And as Cody mentioned, that model was explored by early U.S. industrialists who were looking at how do we maximize our workforce for factories? Because at the time, this is when the factory system was really being built, and what you needed was reliable, uniform workers.
Yeah. So our school system was built with a purpose to create a certain kind of person that our world really needed. Mm-hmm. Like there was a time and a place where this was really, really valuable. However, our world has changed and we no longer need those types of people.
Absolutely. So what's so interesting is, again, we live in a world where now uniformity is probably not necessarily an asset. You need to be able to think outside the box. You need to think critically. And there's so many reasons for this. There was another, it was actually a blog post by some other Acton owners, and they talk about this in terms of truth. Do you remember what they wrote?
He called it the devaluation of truth and the fear of mistakes. In traditional school, a mistake is a shame and is punished. Because of this, the child begins to protect themselves, hiding, making excuses, often lying. They lose the ability to tell the truth and to correct themselves. The system quietly inspires them as if truth is relative and everyone can have their own truth. We teach that in an era of fakes, truth and reputation are a person's most valuable capital.
Now, there is a lot in that paragraph.
A lot in there.
We don't have time to unpack all of it, but here's what I want to drive at. We live in an era where essentially you can deep fake any person. You can throw something on the internet that looks legitimately real and is absolutely fake. We live in an era where we know that the media around us is biased, and it could be biased to the left or biased to the right, but it is biased, and they are giving you a picture of what truth is, but it's an interpreted picture. It's a picture that you actually have to have critical thinking skills. And now we live in an era of AI where AI can essentially create anything.
And it's so hard sometimes to tell the difference between what's real and what's not real.
Exactly. And so what skills do you need in this type of arena? And I will say that learning to regurgitate information, learning to just mindlessly intake and follow orders is probably not the skill sets that you need to be successful in this day and age.
Yeah, I agree.
So the old framing was things like learning information, passing tests, getting credentials. But in the world that we currently live at, what if a better framing is things like, hey, you need to be able to think clearly. You need to be able to build things, as Cody says. You need to be able to lead people, and you need to be able to live with purpose.
Yeah, I saw this really great quote the other day that says, your kids will never Google anything.
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy because I still Google. They won't apply for jobs with resumes. They won't learn to code by hand. They'll talk to an AI agent the way that you talk to Siri, except it will actually work. I think about this a lot as an entrepreneur. We're building the world that they will inherit, and most parents are still prepping their kids like it's 2005. Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. The kids who succeed in 10 years won't be the ones with straight A's. They'll be the ones who learned to create, sell, and think critically before they turn 16. So stop preparing your kids for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Start teaching them to build things, question everything, and own their attention.
Yeah. And so again, we started this conversation by saying we need to ask the question, what kind of humans is our educational system forming? And there are multiple layers to this question. On one hand, for us, we asked the question, what kinds of humans do we want to form based off our values?
Yeah.
And so one of our high values is our faith. And we've talked about this a lot. Faith is a key part of our life. We have a deep belief in God, in Jesus, and all of that is hugely shaping for our life. And we want to pass that on to our kids. But at the same time, we also believe that it's important for them to be able to have that as something that they own. It's not just this thing that they get from us. It's this thing that they learn to appreciate on their own. And for that to happen, they have to actually be in an environment where it gets tested. And
where they're asked hard questions and they have to actually find their own answers. I think faith is only real when you've owned it yourself. And in order to own it yourself, you have to understand why you believe what you believe.
Right. And that means that you have to also understand why other people sincerely believe
what they believe.
And so for us, we recognized we wanted our kids to be in an environment where their faith would be challenged by other people who had different beliefs. But at the same time, we also didn't want them to be in an environment that was so against what they believed that it was punitive, that it punished them for their beliefs.
Yeah. We didn't want them to be penalized for holding certain beliefs and values. Especially at a really young age where they're not going to understand why they're being penalized for that.
So that was where Acton really, really shined for us because, and I think we said this last week, but one of the key commitments of Acton is that it really is a system that believes that these realms, things like faith, are the purview of the parent and the community, right? It's not a teacher's job to come up at the front and tell your children what they ought to believe. And Acton actually lives that out by having guides. And guides do not tell kids things. They tell kids things. That's a bad way of putting it.
Yeah.
But they do not tell kids what to think.
They ask them hard questions.
Right. And so we really valued that. We really valued having people who could ask good questions and allow our kids a chance to explore, why they believe what they believe, why they think this thing is true and that thing is not true, all of those realities.
But also to walk with other people who believe differently and come at and to view their beliefs with a heart of compassion and understanding as well.
Right. Not see them as this
villains.
Evil, bad person out there, right? Totally.
Because our world tends to villainize people who don't think or believe the same things that we believe. And we really didn't want that to be the case for our family.
Yeah, there used to be this idea, I think, in our culture of sort of neutrality, of kind of this pluralism, which was if you had a really good idea and you thought it was a really good idea, you bring it out to the public sphere and it could get pressure tested by other people's ideas and they could play around with it. But if your idea was, something that offended someone or hurt their feelings or something like that, that it was still valuable to bring that idea out there because that pressure testing was necessary to weed out the bad ideas.
Okay.
And what's happened now is that we've created this environment where we sort of cushion our kids a little bit. And what we say is like anything that causes you discomfort, you shouldn't be exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that is then they never actually have a chance to pressure test what they believe.
Yeah.
And so we really wanted our kids to be in an environment where, A, they weren't being overly pressure tested, right? They weren't being crushed.
Yeah.
But where they could actually bring their ideas into the public sphere and have other people ask good questions, challenge them, and hear other people's ideas and compare and contrast those things so they could see what they believed and why.
Yeah.
So that was one of our values. I think the second value that really shaped why we loved Acton is that, again, as we've talked about, the world has dramatically changed. And we wanted our children to be prepared not for the world that is or even the world that was, but the world that will be.
And the thing is, we don't know what that world is going to be.
No.
We can't give them specific skills and abilities for a world in 15, 20 years because we have absolutely no idea what's coming. So what we need to give them is the ability to be adaptable, to think critically, to problem solve no matter where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, really mattered to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that we really loved about Acton is that it really is an institution that builds on those principles.
Mm-hmm.
So not only does it have kind of a value of neutrality when it comes to beliefs, recognizing that that's the realm of the family to kind of work through and that learners can express that in an environment that's safe and neutral, but also it has this value of preparing children with the skills that they need to be adaptable for whatever kind of environment they find themselves in.
Yeah.
And so, some of those really critical things like critical thinking skills, that's why Socratic discussion is so important.
Yeah.
And for those who are like, what is Socratic discussion? Quick nerdy Andrew moment. Socrates, ancient Greek philosopher, the way that he felt was the best way to get at truth was that you had to ask questions. You had to keep questioning and questioning and questioning and questioning until you could question no more, until you got at the kernel of truth. It's that idea again of pressure testing an idea.
Mm-hmm.
You keep digging and digging and digging and digging until you get to the core of what you're looking for. And that's really the foundation for how we develop critical thinking skills. And so every day, Acton starts with a Socratic launch. And it's essentially a learner or a guide who comes up and they share a story and they ask a moral question. And you have people who then vote. They say, hey, I think it's this, I think it's A, or I think it's B. And then they discuss together why they think their reason is the right reason.
Yeah, because there's no clear right way to go.
Mm-hmm.
There's arguments on both sides. I think that's the important piece, is it's not like this is slanted towards we think you should do A, but it's like you could actually justify A or B.
Right.
So pick one and actually defend it.
And then the thing I love is that the learners actually have to give a reason for why they chose A or B.
Yeah.
And they all listen to each other And then they're being taught, oh, I have to assess, I thought this, but that person made a really good argument. And so after that, they vote again.
Yeah.
What do you think? Did anyone change their mind? Maybe. And so some people might have changed their mind. They add some more information or more complexity into the scenario and go through the process again. And all of that is really training learners with the skills to, again, dig underneath the surface and get at the core of truth. Listen and assess which arguments are good, which arguments are bad, and do it in a way that is not, I'm super, super offended because you don't believe the thing that I believe. Like they're learning how to disagree
respectfully.
Well. Yes. So that's a key part of that value structure. There's so many other things that we could talk about, but simple things like learning entrepreneurial skills, right? Really basic. How does the things that I'm learning here connect to real life? One of my favorite things that Acton does every year is a business fair, an entrepreneurial quest. And we're taking those abstract things like mathematics and applying them to a real world circumstance where you have to design a business, find a product, figure out what it costs you to make that product, figure out what your markup is, figure out how much you need to sell to make a profit. All of that kind of stuff is really practical skills that I wish I had. And those skills are going to still be necessary in the world ahead.
Yeah.
And again, we could go on and on and on. Is there any other key pieces to Acton that you think just flow out of our values naturally?
One of the core tenets of what Acton is we believe that every child is uniquely gifted with a passion or a skill or a talent that can impact their world in a profound way. And so when you actually give your child the ability to explore, to create, to try things and fail, to figure out what it is that they're passionate about, what are they good at, what are they not good at, and give them space to learn and explore those things, then when they actually enter the world, they kind of know their direction. They know where they're going. They know what they're good at. They know what they're passionate about, and they can pursue it. And I think that that's a really important piece because oftentimes we graduate kids out of high school and they're like, okay, well, now what? I don't know what I like. I don't know what I'm good at. And so I'm going to spend $100,000 on a degree that maybe I'll use, maybe I won't.
Right.
We just don't know because you could get into that degree and be like, oh, shoot, I don't actually like this.
I know.
Right? That's a reality for a lot of people is they're in jobs that has nothing to do with their degree because their degree, they didn't actually enjoy it.
Or they went into a degree that they did have a passion for and realized that it's not a marketable skill.
Yeah.
Right? It's, my brother, I'll use him as an example. I love my brother. He's an amazing human being, but he loves music and he went into a music degree and he's very good at it. He could play professionally, but he realized that the work of music as a business was not the lifestyle that he wanted. And now he works as a business analyst.
Yeah.
Very different. And I mean, I wouldn't say it's all wasted. I mean, he developed a passion. He grew in that skill set, but it would have been lovely for him, I think, to be able to get into his career a little earlier, get a little bit further ahead. And I mean, he's very ambitious and he works really hard, so he's doing just fine. But it's a great example, thousands of dollars spent on this education that did not lead to a career. And so many people go through that space where they think they're passionate about something, but they've never had a chance to look at it in a deep way, and they start pursuing it. And they get to a place where they realize it's just not going to make ends meet.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think really drew us towards an Acton model was that starting at around the age of 12, our learners do internships. They discover an area that they're passionate about and they seek out an internship where they can learn at the feet of a hero in that field and figure out, do I like this? Can I gain marketable skills? What do I need to do next? So I remember Laura Sandifer in her book, Courage to Grow, talked about one of the kids who absolutely loved animals and was convinced she wanted to be a veterinarian. And so started doing internships with veterinarians and realized that while she did indeed love animals, veterinarian was absolutely not what she wanted to be.
No, because she didn't want to be able to hurt animals, right? And a huge part of what vets do is surgeries.
Yeah.
And she couldn't imagine herself being in the operating room, cutting open Mr. Kitty.
Right? But what good learning? She didn't have to do, I don't even know how long vet school is, I'm guessing a chunk of time in vet school to get out and realize, oh, shoot, I don't actually want to do this.
Yeah. Or, not even getting that practical experience. So then she goes into an undergrad to get the prereqs and then gets into vet school and finds out then, right?
Yeah. So it allows kids the ability to test out, are my passions what I actually want to do? And what can I do within that passion?
Yeah. Maybe two last things that I love about Acton that really resonated with us. One is what we call the hero's journey. So one of the things that I think is sorely lacking in education is just simply that it doesn't have a larger sense of purpose attached to it. I talk to so many children who you ask them, like, why do you go to school? And they're like, because my mom makes me, because I have to, because the government tells me to. I don't know. Right? Those are the answers. Whereas at Acton, we frame the entire educational experience as the hero's journey. Why are you doing this? It's not because you have to. It's because you are on a journey. You are Bilbo Baggins leaving the Shire. You are Harry Potter off to Hogwarts. You are a hero who has a calling, and you are on a quest to find that calling and fulfill it.
And to become the person that you were made to be.
Exactly. And I think especially at the younger years, but even at the older years, that sense of purpose and meaning gives a drive to your educational experience and ownership that this is not just this thing that I have to do. This is actually this journey, this adventure that I've been on. And then it helps you frame up the challenges that you face along the ways. It's Bilbo encountering the trolls and Smaug the dragon. Our children are going to encounter the monsters of apathy, the monsters of laziness, distraction, of interpersonal challenges,
victimhood.
Exactly.
And it just gives so much purpose and value to that struggle, so that when a child is struggling, you can come to them and be like, this is a valuable thing. It's worth it for you to fight through this, to continue pursuing your learning, to continue pursuing growth, because you're going to be so much better on the other side of this.
And to kind of bring it back to what we started this all off with, which is we wanted to know what kind of school or what kind of humans our school would form. When you think about something like the hero's journey, it's really all about formation. The goal isn't, hey, how do I get the right grades to get into the right college? The question is, how do I become the right kind of person?
Yeah.
And so there are so many other things that we could talk about with Acton. I mean, so many things that we love. The idea of mastery learning, the idea of real world exhibitions, all of those things. But ultimately, the reason that Shannon and I chose Acton was because for us, it really hit on those values that we really cared about. And chiefly the values of saying we want to know that the environment that our kids are spending a huge portion of their time is actually going to care more about who they become than what they can produce.
Yeah. So I think if you're asking similar questions and you're saying, who do I want my kids to be? What character do I want instilled in them? What skill set do I want them to have to enter into a world that we don't know what that looks like? I think school choice is something you should be really doing a lot of research into to figure out what is the right school choice to answer those questions and to help instill the things in your kids that you really value.
Absolutely. So once again, we are so thankful that you chose to join us, and we hope that you'll join us again next week for another episode of The Intentional Family.